And I now hand over to Nicola.
Thank you very much, Valdis. Thank you also for this overview and mentioning the main arguments for this proposal. 3 years ago, in Göteborg, the Pillar of Social Rights was endorsed by member states, endorsed by the institutions of the European Union, and also endorsed, by the way, by social partners. And everybody asked, well, what will happen now with these nice 20 principles? And one of these principles is about minimum wages. It's about setting minimum wages. It's about respecting national traditions in the setting of wages. Today, we are implementing principle number 6, which is certainly not the easiest one. And I think Valdis and myself, we know that it was quite a debate and quite a lot of consultation and discussions around this proposal. But I think the Commission has delivered on a very important principle of the social rights pillar. Now, a lot of questions have been put to us and about what kind of legal instrument do we need. I heard, mainly also from the business side, we should not have a directive, we should eventually have a recommendation, and so on and so forth. At the end, the Commission decided to have a directive. And I think it was rightly so, because first, and the Vice President just mentioned it, there is at the beginning of this Commission a very strong commitment by the President of the Commission on this issue. She used very, very strong words, talking about the dignity of work, talking about fairness, the fairness of wages, talking about the necessity for people that works, as you mentioned already, that works pay. And I think after these words, we had to give a clear political signal. And this clear political signal is this directive. This directive, which is in a way the real sense of a directive. It's not imposing to every member state the same system, the same approach. It's not one size fits all. It's first recognizing the diversity of the European Union. And this diversity, you have mentioned it already, is that 6 member states do not have statutory minimum wages. They have systems based on exclusively on collective bargaining, and 21 other member states, they have statutory minimum wage. So it was never, and I say it very firmly and clearly, it was never a question to change, to undermine, to weaken, or whatever, the system of those who are based, where wage setting is based on collective bargaining. In the contrary, this directive is about minimum wages, but it is also about setting minimum wages. And in setting minimum wages and above minimum wages, it's about also collective bargaining. And there is one article which is devoted to the level and the promotion of collective bargaining. So in that sense, we not just protect or recognize the specificity of the collective bargaining systems, we want finally all the other member states to go the same way and to extend the practice of collective bargaining. And that's why there is even an objective of 70% coverage by collective bargaining, which in a medium to long term, member states should try to achieve. The second point is for those who have statutory minimum wages. We do not want to change their particular systems, which go from very much involvement of social partners, commissions, or just the government, So we do not impose one model. But we think that it is very important to have objective criteria in order to adapt minimum wages, adjust minimum wages to the economic, but also the living conditions in the different member states. And therefore, we give tools, we give instruments, we invite member states to establish objective criteria on the basis of purchasing power, of the distribution of wages, of the growth of gross wages, and obviously also on the basis of productivity in the economy. And these are criteria which then should bring member states to adjust regularly minimum wages, and also to evaluate if the level of minimum wages which are practiced are not too low, because people in some member states obviously cannot make a decent living with this level of wage. Now, how does this function then when this assessment has been made? It functions that the Commission will not impose any rule, but it will build a monitoring system, as we have a lot of other monitoring systems, by the way, and the Vice President knows very well in which areas we have very strong monitoring systems. So we build a monitoring system also for wages. And this monitoring system allows us first to look how wages are evolving, but also to have a look on convergence, because we have to work on not only on economic convergence, which is extremely important, but also at the same time of social convergence, of wage convergence in this union. Because we cannot, the Vice President has mentioned the big gap between the highest and the lowest. It's nearly 1 to 7. Productivity is not 1 to 7. Certainly, living costs are different in the highest level country in comparison to the lowest, but not 1 to 7. So convergence is one of the essential parts of this proposal. And we will then yearly have a monitoring system on wages, as we have a monitoring system on macroeconomic evolution, on budgets, and so on. So I think this is an innovation, a strong innovation, which makes sure also that wages are not forgotten, and wages are also an important element of the economic context. We think that in this context of crisis, and it has already been mentioned, we have to give the signal that those who are at the bottom, those who are very much exposed to the risks of this crisis, of this pandemic, they are not the forgotten ones. They are not those who have to pay the highest price for this crisis. They are not those who will at the end hear that their wages will be cut or their wages will be frozen. And therefore, I think this is an important political signal, social signal, because we need precisely in this crisis more cohesion, more social dialogue, better collective bargaining, to rebuild, by the way, the economy. This is very much linked also to the recovery and resilience facility and recovery and resilience program. Because we cannot have resilience when 10 or more % of people feel finally the forgotten ones, those who are the losers of this crisis. So building the resilience in our economy, building the resilience in our society is also part of social justice and social fairness. And my last point is, yes, we have to defend, and we have defended the last months, the internal market, because this is the major instrument of our prosperity. But it becomes not easy to defend the functioning of the internal market if the gaps are too big, if people get the impression that finally the competition in this market is just based on the competition between social systems and wages. This would not be fair either, and the President of the Commission has very much insisted also on this aspect. So it's not acceptable that wages and low wages become the major instrument for competition. What we want is to rebuild this European economy after the crisis on knowledge, on investment in new technologies, in green technologies, in high technologies, in digital technologies, and in skills of people, skilling people, upskilling people. This is the challenge we have to fully respond to. And therefore, I think there is a very strong social message in this directive, but there is also an economic message in this directive that we want to rebuild the European economy on the basis of higher productivity and higher technological level. Thank you.